Continuing assignment 2, our collaged creature, our fantasy creature composite. Since we had a weekend between last class and now, I'll just really quickly review. We've done 5 videos on this assignment so far using Photopea and freeware. And we've used Pixabay for all of our high quality references. And then I've been using a metaphor of building a car for how you put all the things together, right? So the most important part of a car is the engine. That gets built first. For creature design, the most important part is the head. The head has to get figured out first so you understand how it's relating to its environment, which direction it's facing. And it's the focal point of the creature, right? Everything will flow from there. So where we got to with last class was roughly placing everything and then trying to seam some of the internal edges, right? Like softly erase. And we got most of the head kind of seamed together. But what we haven't done anything with is color correcting. And color correcting is really going to help bring a lot of this together fully. We've color corrected certain elements with each other, but not the whole thing together. So if I open it up in Photopea, I'm going to look at what I have. I have these different folders. I have one for the feet. Photopea's a little slow. So I have another foot out there somewhere. There it is. So I'm going to organize that. So I have 2 different feet. Got the feet. I've got the head. Underneath the head, I've got this little chin curtain, which I added at the end. It's a nice transition. It covers up the rhino's face nicely. I've got the body. And the body is a combination of these rhino legs and this bison back, spine, and rib cage. And I've got my sketch underneath it all. At this point, I can turn off my sketch. And I just have a blank gray layer behind everything. Because now I'm going to want to start cleaning up the outside edges. Now the reason I rough place everything before I clean up the outside edges is so I don't clean up more than I need to, right? It takes a lot of time to clean things up nicely. So I'm going to start from the body. And because I know the feet are on top of the body, I don't need to worry about cleaning up around those. So it's really based on your reference, because it's hard to get a buffalo into a soundstage and put a green screen around them. The background here has a lot of the same colors as the interior of the buffalo, and it's really diverse. So if I try to use the magic wand with contiguous turned on and select the background, notice it's also going to select a lot internal to the creature. So that's probably not worth doing, so I'll hit Command D to deselect. And instead, I'm just going to use my lasso tool, but I'm going to have a feather on. And because I'm doing the outside edge, I'm going to take that feather down to 2 pixels. So pretty darn sharp, but not perfectly sharp. What's so nice about having a feather, even just a 1 pixel feather, is that when you delete, you'll have the option of deleting more, and it will keep biting away at the edge and slightly softening and feathering it. So I'll show you. So if I take this chunk away, because I have that feather turned on, sometimes I was right on, sometimes I was too far in, sometimes I got too far out. The feather is going to soften all of that and make it a slight gradation. And the more I hit delete, the more it will bite into the edge until I've gotten kind of a clean distinction. And it's not the worst thing in the world if you cut a little bit away from your source material, because we're creating the anatomy here. Now I'm zoomed in at 300% right now. You can use Command plus to zoom in. Honestly, that's too much. 300% is overkill. So I'll try to limit myself, because you can get really, really perfectionist otherwise. Limit myself to only zooming into 200%. Yes, are there going to be some pixels that get left out? Probably, but it's not a big issue. because at 200%, that's 2 times better than you would need it to be at print resolution. So anything you can't see at 200%, you're not going to be able to see with your naked eye on your print, even at full resolution. So this is one way to kind of delete out and not be too stressed. You do it kind of chunk by chunk. Again, feel empowered to find your own edges. And then I can zoom out with Command minus, and you can see I can just get rid of all of this easily. Now, one mistake, since we're not all 100% used to using the lasso tool, is that you always need to close your selections. So one mistake a lot of students were making, like say I wanted to remove this tree here. I might draw here and then find the edge and then just let go. And what happens if you let go, the selection always has to be closed. So it will create a straight line from wherever you let go to where you began. So what happens sometimes is students say, okay, I want to cut it off right there. And then they let go, right? And now they're inside their creature instead of outside. So remember, with selections, you need to start, and then you need to loop back to the beginning. And it's helpful to have a little bit of a feather turned on in your selection tools. So I just did that at like 50%. And you can see that that selection is not terrible, but it's going to be a little wonkier than if you're zoomed in. You can always hit delete again and soften it. You can always hit Command D to deselect and then trim it up. Get around the tail here. Now, the reason I say 2 pixels is because 2 pixels is good even if it's a really hard texture, like scales, like something that you expect to be completely hard-edged. Fur, you can get away with a little less because fur is somewhat translucent. And then feathers, you can get away with even less because feathers are translucent. But what we want is a clean edge. And right now I'm just doing it on this one reference of the bison. Now, let's look at some other selection tools. So this is the lasso. We've used it a lot. But once we get up to the sky here, this is closer to like a soundstage, where the bison itself, the asset, those pixels are very different than the background. So that's a good chance for maybe using Magic Wand, especially because we're getting closer to the head, and there's going to be a little bit more focus on the textures here. So if I use the Magic Wand and I set it to 32, anti-alias and contiguous, and I just click, and then if I want to add to it, I can hold down Shift and add. This is a feather of 3 pixels. Sometimes this will select it better than you could. And then you just delete until that little halo of blue goes away. Without the feather, you can never get rid of that halo. Okay, now the underside. So I like to start with my furthest back layer. And I like to not have my sketch turned on because it can be distracting, but just a plain gray background. If you need to create a plain background for yourself, you do that by creating a new layer, clicking on this little post-it new layer thing. That new layer is empty, so you go to Edit, Fill, and you fill it with gray at 100% full opacity.
Gray is for if you did black.
You can do black, yeah.
Okay.
What's nice about gray is I think it hides the least. And if it didn't do it, it's because I had a selection active that it filled with gray instead. So I can always hit Command 0 to see the whole thing. I want to take the whole layer, say Edit, Fill, and with gray. What's nice about gray is you'll see things that are lighter than gray. You'll see things that are darker than gray. And you'll be able to catch most of the little debris that way. And it's a little bit easier on the eyes than white. So here we have too much varied pixel content in the background again. So I have to use my lasso. You are free to play with, experiment, oh, wrong layer, with the other selection tools like Quick Select. The problem is they're just never very accurate. So if I use the Quick Selection, which is with the magic wand, you kind of paint in a section. It's a bizarre tool, especially in Photopea. So I just stick with the basics, magic wand and lasso.
Question with like feathers or fur.
Mm-hmm.
I was noticing I could do the feathering to a certain point and the lasso to a certain point, but when it's a really drastic, like a bearded look,
Yeah, you might have
figure
to.
out how to do that.
So you might have to individually lasso like the cutout shapes, right, that aren't touching. Or you can do a magic wand with contiguous turned off.
Okay.
So let's say, what if I have an example here? So let's say it's like on green background, but it's orange hair and fur.
Yeah.
If you select the green with contiguous turned off with the magic wand, it should select the green everywhere, even in all those little cutaways. There's a term for that when they're not connecting with the outside, but it's failing me right now. But that should help.
Thank you.
And then what I often do is I'll use the magic wand, but I'll just use it as a stencil. So you make the selection, but then you use your actual eraser tool to erase, so you're only deleting from where you select. And that can work as well. And I'm happy to show that to you. Remember, one of our new class rules is to ask for help as soon as you need it, which means if you're stuck to a place where you can't experiment and move on, raise that hand. And we're starting to get digital honor students to come up and help too. Because these are common issues with compositing.
So for some reason, I don't think my computer is letting me do anything.
All right. That's one of those issues that keeps us from moving on. All right. So because I've seamed all the creatures together, I know how much of the bison I need to cut out, and I think I've done all of it now for the bison layer. Now I can move to the rhino feet, and if that exposes more of the bison that needs to be cut out, then that's easily done. But I'm just going to use my lasso again, and now I'm going to find my own line and my own anatomy and cut these out. But notice the lighting's not really matching, the coloring's not really matching yet. I'm just trying to see it pretty clearly. And you can chunk it. You don't need to do it all in one pass. That can be very stressful. So that revealed more of the bison, but now it's so easy because now I just select all of that because I know the rhino feet are covering it up. Oh, but I got a little too much. Remember, you can also, with the magic wand or any selection tool, you can subtract from your selection by holding down Option. And then if Photopea is having trouble deleting for you, that's just a glitch, and that always has to do with memory. So save your work, Command S. Make sure programs aren't open that need to be open. So I just have Chrome open for Photopea, and then I'm using a screen recorder. But I'm trying to use all of the processing power towards this process. And then I can continue.